The story begins with a crash. A young girl is hit with force by a car and her life flashes before her eyes. But instead of everything going black, the girl was transported to another dimension. It was there that she was met by a woman. The woman was beautiful, with light hair and eyes. She sat composed, gently telling the girl exactly what happened. She was hit by a speeding car and died instantly. The girl was only returning home from her martial arts practice, something she had been doing since childhood. The girl was of course upset, knowing now she was dead she could no longer see her family. She turned to the mysterious woman and asked who she was. The woman replied that she was a goddess, gently laughing. The goddess told the girl that in reality, she wasn't meant to die. And then memories of the accident came flooding back, how there was a family and the girl jumped in to protect a mother and her child. The goddess nodded, telling her that since she was not destined to die, the girl had been removed from the circle of reincarnation. She will not be able to return to her original world or be reborn there. So the goddess had a special plan for the girl, to transfer her to another world. And it seemed like everything was already arranged for the girl, as the goddess announced her new destination. She told the girl to look into a crystal, which she magically pulled out of nowhere. Of course, the girl did as she was told. On the other side of the crystal was a woman. "Who is this woman?" the girl asked. The goddess told her that this woman has already lived the same life 5 times. There is a force beyond her control as a goddess, and it was interfering with her fate. The girl was shocked to hear a life lived on repeat 5 times. She wondered if this was what they called a time loop. The goddess introduced the woman as Alexandra Vistoriano. She is a duke's daughter, a noble of high rank. 2 more people appeared in the crystal, a sullen-looking young man and a woman. The man was named Loris Baltus. He spat out some cruel words, telling Alexandra that she must have been jealous of his relationship, and that was why she harassed another woman. The woman he was referring to was Delphina Serrato. The goddess added that Delphina actually possessed holy magic. The girl shrieked at the idea that magic was usable in this dimension, and the goddess explained that in this world, there is elemental magic: fire, water, wind, earth, lightning, ice, and even void magic. But the rarest of all is holy magic. It was used for healing and purification, and it sometimes possesses a power known as allure magic. The girl asked what the goddess meant by allure magic, and the goddess explained exactly what it was. Allure magic was a dangerous type of magic, making people become completely captivated by you, bending to your will without resistance. But for some reason, most people in the world do not realize that allure magic is part of holy magic. Delphina took advantage of this skill, using it to manipulate men and drove them to corner and oppress Alexandra. The girl couldn't believe it. What type of life was this? The tale got worse when another 3 figures were introduced. A man named Rosario Marchetti, another named Oreste Rodato, and finally Severin Frigorini. The men surrounding Alexandra were all sons of high-ranking nobles. Apart from Severin, they are all already engaged, yet fell under Delphina's spell. In the end, Delphina falsely accused Alexandra of a fabricated crime. She was thrown into a rickety carriage, meeting a tragic end each time as she fades into oblivion. Meanwhile, Delphina happily lives with the men she has ensnared with her magic. Was there any way to save her? The girl asked. But the goddess shook her head. She told the girl that as a goddess, there was no way for her to intervene. Of course she tried, but the result has always been the same. After 5 repeated cycles, Alexandra's soul is on the verge of complete collapse. She has completely resigned herself to her fate, and if her soul fully collapses, she will be erased from existence entirely. The goddess told the girl that she wanted to save her before that happens. She looked over at the girl, who was clearly moved by Alexandra's story. The goddess could only assume that the girl would want to help the situation, crushing Delphina and her followers. In light of that, the goddess had a request. She asked the girl if she would be happy to take Alexandra's place. And despite witnessing a nightmare of a life with dark spells, betrayal, and tragic endings, not to mention being a victim of a terrible accident herself only 5 minutes ago, the girl accepted the proposal. And then, she was transported to Alexandra's body, who was dealing with some drama. Loris was yelling at her, telling her that he wasn't interested in any weak excuses. But Alexandra was too fascinated by her new body, not to mention the stunning regal room she was transported to. It was like Loris's ranting was nothing but white noise. All she could think was how annoying he was. So that's exactly what she said. Loris gasped, and so did Delphina. The goddess spoke to Alexandra, telling her that the soul exchange process was a success. She agreed to send Alexandra's soul into the cycle of reincarnation, so the ball was now in the new Alexandra's court. The last few details that she was told was that Alexandra was capable of using all types of magic, except for holy magic. Alexandra heard her name being called, and she knew that she needed to snap out of it. Right now was showtime. She told the group that she had been listening to them talk as if it was them personally who ruled the world, and she was over it. She asked them if it would be better to stop and think who really was at fault here. She heard a voice stutter in shock asking what she was talking about. But Alexandra was way too overstimulated to answer. Her dress was so heavy. Did she really need to wear this? She thought to herself how she wanted the dress to just disappear. And that is exactly what she did. The dress thinned itself out significantly. What a relief thanks to her magic powers. She turned to the group, telling them that they are nothing but annoying. She called for someone to explain exactly what was going on now. She remembered what she saw in the crystal, and called the men out for betraying their fiancés to get involved with another woman. She lectured that she didn't care about their noble or regal backgrounds. Betrayal was betrayal, and they were a disgrace. She spotted two familiar faces, Rosario and Oresti, and decided to call them out individually. She told them that they failed to face their mistakes, and now all they can do is use Alexandra as a scapegoat. The men winced as she called them pathetic, and Oreste even went as far as calling Alexandra a bastard. He held his hand up, but Alexandra stopped him immediately, as if he was going to get violent now. In the middle of the confrontation, Alexandra heard a soft voice, asking if he came at a bad time. It was Severin. He asked what exactly was going on, immediately scolding Oresti for holding his hands up at a woman. He turned to look at Loris, to ask him why he was embracing a woman other than Miss Alexandra. Severin really made everyone shut up. And then he didn't hesitate to spit facts. He exposed all the men for betraying their fiancés, blindly and foolishly following Delphina. And if that wasn't enough, they had the audacity to fabricate false accusations, accusing Alexandra of things she never did. Alexandra powerfully told them she had now decided to return the favor. She pointed at Severin, warning him not to get in her way. Severin chuckled nervously, promising he wouldn't get involved with whatever Alexandra had planned. Alexandra started with Oresti, asking him if he really trembled just because another person showed up. Of course, Oreste tried to put his hands on her again, but fortunately Alexandra's self-defense skills did not die along with her previous body. She skillfully dodged him and Oresti went flying. He stumbled back onto his feet and screamed at Alexandra to not get too cocky. He jumped towards her again, but his movements were far too broad and predictable. Alexandra had him on the floor again within a few seconds. Rosario cried over his friend like a baby, and Alexandra sweetly smiled at him before booting him in the face. It was then that both the men were wailing for her to stop. Alexandra smiled, more than satisfied to see them like this. She asked what they really thought would happen, that they would be able to throw her in the carriage? Not this time. The men were too weak to even get up from the ground. All they could do is look up to Alexandra in pure horror. Delphina looked just as defeated, despite not even being touched. Alexandra walked towards her calmly, asking her if she was really the one who harassed her. Delphina weakly apologized, tears appearing in her eyes. Alexandra teased that she couldn't hear her, and the girl cried, "Alexandra never harassed me," admitting she was lying. Alexandra smiled. She knew she did a good job. And the goddess did too. She spoke to Alexandra, applauding her for the fantastic job she did. She told her that Alexandra's soul was now entering the cycle of reincarnation, and it was all thanks to her. Alexandra asked if there was any more she could do, but the goddess knew it was enough. Alexandra looked down, like the true hero who saved 2 lives in a single day. She told the goddess there was no need to thank her, smiling proudly. But the goddess had some news. There was a change. And before Alexandra could ask any more details, the ground started to collapse under her feet. There was an earthquake. All Alexandra could feel was herself free-falling, and everything went dark. When she opened her eyes, everything changed. Could a day get any far from worse? And just like that, Alexandra was 5 years old again, having her hair brushed by a maid. She looked at her new little body in the mirror before thanking the maid for doing her hair. Due to the change, Alexandra was a child again. Her mother came running into her room, embracing her in a warm hug. The little girl had supposedly fallen off her horse, and she really gave her mother a fright. On the 5th return in time, she switched places with Alexandra Vistoriano, and she began her new life as her. But how was she accepted into this life so easily? Alexandra heard her name being called. It was the goddess. Due to the change, Alexandra lost her memories, but falling off the horse brought everything back when she met the god again. The goddess smiled, telling her that her life had essentially restarted. Everything began from scratch, but her interference as a god ended here. According to the gods, this was the first time Alexandra had an accident in this timeline. The goddess told little Alexandra that it was sad, but inevitable. She could no longer speak to her, but she would always watch over her. She told Alexandra she would grant her a blessing. A blessing? Little Alexandra asked curiously. The goddess told her she would be giving her a magical power where she could use all of the elements. That moment was the last time Alexandra spoke to the goddess. Her memories remained intact, but again, what could you do as a 5-year-old? She clung onto her mother like most kids do, until her father walked in, followed by her older brother Janice. Her father asked her if she was hurt after the accident, and Alexandra said she was. Her father gently placed his hand on her head, performing some type of analysis. It was then that he realized Ali's magical power had increased tremendously. In fact, it seemed like his daughter was given a blessing from a god. She could now deal with all magical elements. He told his wife how Ali had earned God's favor, and that was what saved her in the accident. He was happy she was safe, but he knew Ali's skill could potentially put her in danger. If she were to catch the attention of the royal family, they might force her into marriage, most likely to the second prince, so her father called for a rule to never let Ali marry. 3 years passed, making Ali now 8 years old, and it was her very first tea party. Over the past 3 years, she underwent training with her father to master concealment and control with her mother. And finally, the long-awaited day had arrived. Ali was called over by her 2 friends, Felicia and Felicita, who went by CIA and Sita. They were sisters and both daughters of a marquis. They smiled, telling her to sit with them, before asking if it was her first time at a tea party. They explained that royal tea parties were always like this, despite Ali's imagination of a mass gathering to select marriage candidates. Ali asked her friends if they had found anyone who caught their attention. They laughed and told her that any man who couldn't tell them apart wasn't worth their time. Despite the twins being identical, their personalities were completely different, as well as their eye color. Sita had hazel eyes and was more energetic, though prone to rushing. CIA had blue eyes and she was much calmer and gentler. CIA and Sita were Ali's closest friends, and they were the only ones who knew the truth about Ali's magical powers. Ali sipped her tea before asking what was going on. She saw a group of girls bouncing together in sheer excitement. The boys had arrived. CIA and Sita announced that Loris Baltus, the second prince, Rosario Marchetti, the prime minister's son, Oreste Rodato, the marquise's son, and finally Severin Frigorini, the son of the head of sorcerers, had all arrived. The girls agreed they all had great potential, and it was clear the young boys were loving the attention, but all Ali could think about was how familiar these boys looked. All Ali wanted to do was go home, but she became quite popular with the boys, who asked if she was willing to hang out with them. CIA and Sita knew Ali was pretty, so of course this would happen. Ali wasn't interested, but she was kind. One of the boys stepped forward, criticizing the others for harassing Ali. He ushered them to leave. Ali was impressed that the boy stepped in to save her. The boy turned to Ali and asked her if she was all right. Ali told him she was fine, but to her surprise, the boy told her that if she ever faced trouble in the future, she could rely on him. The boy introduced himself as Loris Baltus, and all Ali could think of was how he couldn't remember his past life either. The second boy introduced himself as Oreste. Ali introduced herself as Alexandra Vistoriano. The boys asked if it was Ali's first tea party, and she told them it was. They then asked why she hadn't attended before. Ali played none the wiser, suggesting it was the first time she was invited, so she just found herself here. The boys told her she should participate more in the future, as tea parties were the best opportunity to expand her social circle. Oreste grabbed some treats before turning to the twins. He told them boldly that they both still looked identical. He turned to Rodato, asking if he thought the same. Rodato could see their differences, however. Not just their eye color, but their aura too. The twins giggled, knowing they had found their match. One twin told him how wonderful it was that he could tell them apart, and Rodato told them he could distinguish that Lady Felicita had a gentle charm, while Felicia had a more elegant beauty. All Ali could think was how she booted this same kid not too long ago. Suddenly his eyes flashed and Ali wondered if he remembered too, but instead he asked if she was Lord Janus's sister. The boy smiled, telling her he studied under Lord Janus. It was a shame because the 3 boys seemed innocent and sweet, a far cry from the disgraceful young men they turned out to be. But Ali gave them the benefit of the doubt. They were under a powerful magic spell after all. Rodato noticed Ali going quiet and he asked what was wrong. He realized the sweets ran out, so hurried to get some more. Ali thought she might as well enjoy herself while she could. But before they could move, a group of noble ladies caught hold of him. Ali wandered over to the treat table, which was full of delicious food. Ali decided to treat herself to a plateful, balancing it as she walked back. A foolish girl stuck her foot out, hoping Ali would fall, but Ali quickly noticed and decided to step on it instead. The girl shouted at Ali, but Ali calmly asked what the issue was. She told the girl it was the second time she noticed this. She guessed the girl was angry because the prince and his companions were sitting with them. She asked the girl to just say it to her face if she had an issue, instead of trying to trip her and ruin all the sweets. The boys rushed over and helped Ali carry the food, quickly sticking up for her too. Loris told the girls that it was his decision to sit with them, so if they had an issue, they should direct it at him. Ali smiled, telling Loris that she noticed how he came to the rescue once again. Loris nodded, but he told her he never expected her to be this bold. The twins were impressed with how quickly Ali acted too. They told her that if it had been them, they would have definitely fallen. Oreste also complimented her reflexes, hoping to duel with her one day. How very ironic. Ali told her friends that she trained constantly so she would never lose to anyone ordinary. Oreste smiled, telling her he was only joking, too little, too late Oreste, and Rodato mentioned that he personally was terrible at physical combat. All Loris could cough up was that Ali was truly a wild one. Since they now knew each other a little better, Loris asked if they could refer to each other casually, by their first names only. Ali hesitated at the thought of calling them without their titles, but Loris smiled, asking if a bold girl like her even cared about things like that. Ali admitted she did, but she would be fine with it if they were. The boys smiled. So it was then that Ali realized she had really succeeded in starting over. The group chatted away all evening, which passed blissfully, until there was yet another incident. Guards came in, yelling that a magical horse had lost control and was charging toward the party at full speed. Everyone dashed to their feet, immediately thinking about evacuating. The magical horse bolted towards Ali, and she needed to think fast. She shouted for Loris to take care of the twins, but of course Loris told Ali to run too. But Ali had another idea. She was going to stop the horse. To everyone's surprise, she began running towards the animal at full speed. And just before the horse was too close, she held her hands out. She immediately saw its fiery red body and its golden mane which sparkled in the sun. A truly beautiful creature. Meanwhile, a young man was racing on the back of another horse, chasing after the spooked one. He saw Ali in the middle of the path and shouted at her to move. But Ali knew exactly what she was doing. She called the horse to her before jumping up, and then within a few seconds she had tamed the animal, wrapping her arms around his neck. She smiled, telling the horse gently to relax. The mysterious boy could not believe it. He rushed over to Ali to ask if she was hurt. Ali told him she was fine and the horse was too. She warned the boy not to punish the animal as it was clear he was only scared. She noticed some bruising on the horse's neck and asked if they were whip marks. She knew how much pain the animal was in. She asked the boy if he could understand what the horse was saying. The boy told her that he couldn't. Ali admitted that she could understand animals' feelings to some extent, ever since she fell off a horse when she was little, and she knew that this one just wanted to be free. The boy told her it was amazing she could do that, but what Ali did was extremely dangerous. Getting out of this unharmed was a miracle. Ali told him she was sorry, and the boy kissed her hand. He told her that thanks to her, the horse would continue to live. It was in that moment that Ali could get a closer look at the boy. He was handsome with long light hair. She heard a voice call for His Highness Umberto, before it scolded the boy for running off so recklessly. The voice came closer and noticed Ali. He recognized her as Janice's sister. Ali nodded before apologizing for not realizing the boy was royal, but the boy told her there was no need for formalities. He introduced himself as Umberto Baltis, the crown prince of the country. He asked if he would be allowed to call Alexandra Ali, before getting on his knees and kissing her hand. The twins freaked out when they saw what happened, especially when she returned with the crown prince. But they were super relieved she was safe and sound, although they admitted they knew she would be fine. Umberto asked if the two were the famous twins of the Cambrani family before complimenting them for being so full of energy. He apologized to Loris for the mess, but Loris was just happy to see his brother all right. Umberto told him he was fine, explaining that Ali skillfully managed to stop the magic horse. He gathered the crowd and apologized to everyone for the incident. He wished them a good rest of their evening, and before long, everything was back to normal. The boys asked if it was really Ali who saved the day, and the prince did not hesitate to give credit to Ali for everything she did. But soon enough it was time for Umberto to leave. He wished Ali goodbye, and Loris asked if they would be returning together that day. He sweetly hugged his little brother. When the prince left, the girls couldn't help but squeal over how handsome Umberto was. He almost rivaled his brother Janice's beauty. Oreste had another question though. What exactly made the horse so agitated? Ali told him there were whip mark wounds on the horse's body, and he must have been in pain. At the stables, the prince was told that it was the daughter of Count Polidoro who was responsible for injuring the horse. Some people saw her enter the stables holding a whip. It was revealed that she had been harassing the other candidates, so she was removed from the list of potential brides for the prince. Since the prince would be turning 14 soon, it was expected that he would find a fiancé. But despite narrowing down the list of candidates, he wasn't interested in any of them. It seemed he didn't intend to choose. The prince wondered if there would be any consequences before remembering how kind Ali was that day. Even though her innocence still dominated her, he knew that she would grow to become a captivating woman. He couldn't imagine her as anyone's bride, as he was told that she herself didn't want that. He told Jan he was lucky for getting a kiss on the cheek. Since the party, the boys, Ali, and the twins became even closer. They played a game, testing their magical skills. Of course, Ali was the best, despite needing to conceal most of her magic. Loris told her that spell magic was truly incredible after suffering 10 consecutive losses. Ali explained how her father told her that magic was based on imagination, and she knew her skills in fighting games and RPGs from her past life. And since she could clearly visualize battle scenes, she didn't need spells. Loris loved Allie's optimism, and it was something he really admired about her. At first he assumed she was a quiet noble lady and acted accordingly around her, but now he could really see her true, relaxed nature. The twins agreed, mentioning how the contrast between Allie's personality and appearance was striking. They sweetly called her one of their dearest friends, in the past, now, and always. Allie was taken aback by how genuine the connections she made in this world were. But the sweet moment was interrupted. Allie whipped her head back to hear an announcement. Apparently, 2 of the brothers' engagement candidates would be visiting the palace tomorrow. The boys looked at each other, knowing what that meant. The kids gathered around a bush to look into a gazebo, where 2 women were sitting elegantly drinking tea. Compared to Allie and the twins, they were fully grown women. Loris told them both were daughters of a count, before admitting that he memorized all potential candidates for his brother. But something caught Rodato's eye. He commented on how the actions of the woman on the right were pretty suspicious. She seemed to isolate herself from the prince and the other candidate. Rodato's suspicions were confirmed correct when she discreetly whipped out a small tube. Was it what they thought it was? The contents of the tube splashed into the prince's tea, which he was now bringing closer to his mouth. Allie was the one to act first. Allie called for Umberto not to drink the tea. She bolted toward the gazebo as the women looked up in horror. She clutched onto Umberto just in time, as Loris told him that he saw Lady Galdiera put something in his tea. Umberto smiled, asking Lady Galdiera if she had anything to say about the children's claims. The lady began to threaten, telling the prince that she had no idea what they were talking about. Birds began magically surrounding the lady as she frantically called for help. Of course, Allie winked at a squirrel perched on her shoulder carrying the tube that the lady had used. Allie handed it to the prince, who asked her what it was. The lady continued to act clueless, but Loris told his brother that it was the liquid inside the tube that had been added to his tea. At this point, Lady Galdiera had nothing left to defend herself with. She stuttered an apology, her eyes swelling with tears. It turned out that the contents of the tube were not poison, but a love elixir. The lady had a serious crush on the prince and wanted him to choose her. The prince had no sympathy, telling her that he already noticed her slipping something into the teacup. He revealed that he had planned to pretend to sip it to test her reaction, but Allie stopped him before that could happen. Allie apologized for acting so recklessly, but the prince was grateful she had looked out for him. He suggested that everyone move to another room to talk privately, but he made it clear to Lady Galdiera that her actions would result in her being removed from the list of engagement candidates. Galdiera frantically asked the prince to reconsider, insisting it was nothing more than a love elixir. But the prince's decision was final. He told her that what she did was wrong, and it was even worse that she did not understand the severity of her act. The royal guards escorted Galdiera away. When the drama settled, Umberto called Allie's name. He got on one knee and thanked her for saving him before kissing her gently on the cheek. Allie went scarlet, gently touching the spot where he kissed her. Loris asked if there was any reward for him too. Allie whispered in the prince's ear, sweetly telling him, "You're welcome." Later, the Galdiera family was demoted from the title of count to baron. She was no longer allowed to speak to the prince. It turned out that marriage to Prince Umberto guaranteed the bride's family elevated status, which was why all the candidates clung so desperately to the opportunity. The prince issued an official statement, saying he could not promise to choose a wife from among the women. Despite this, none of the candidates withdrew. All of them, regardless of rank, held on to hope. Allie could only imagine how hard it was being a prince. She knew how much politics interfered with speaking one's mind. At that moment, Umberto's gaze was cold, far removed from his usual calm demeanor. She could only wonder who the real Prince Umberto was. 6 years passed, and Allie was now 14. She was still great friends with CIA and Sita, and they often gathered to play their magical games. Oresti cringed, realizing he had lost to Allie once again. Loris laughed, asking if Oresti was still unable to surpass her in hand-to-hand combat despite getting stronger thanks to sword training. But Allie excelled at surprise attacks, ambushing Oresti before he could retaliate. She told him that a surprise attack was key to victory. The group remained close. Some had changed a little while others stayed the same. Oresti grew quickly, becoming stronger and broader than before. But there was one big change. The group discovered that Oresti had admired Sita from the very beginning, and now they were planning to get engaged before joining the Royal Magic Academy. Allie watched the two interact and realized she had never picked up on the signs between them. Additionally, Rosario surprised the group when he confessed his feelings to CIA in front of everyone. Allie was thrilled to see her friends so happy, and she knew she would have to ask CIA about the details later. She turned to Loris, telling him it seemed like they were the only ones left without a love interest. Loris chuckled, telling her not to put it that way. Allie grew to love Loris, but only as a friend. A couple of them teased her, asking why she didn't just date him, but she knew that if she did become his fiancé, she might have to punch him again. and she did not want to hit her friend. She looked over as the boys joked around, and suddenly Loris announced that his brother had arrived from the neighboring kingdom. Just like that, Umberto was back, and the first person he called for was Ali. Umberto approached her, saying it had been a whole year since he last saw her. Loris hugged his brother for ages, remarking that he seemed even more mature and handsome than before. Ali giggled, noticing how the brothers looked like long-lost lovers after years apart. Umberto eventually turned to Ali again, asking if she was willing to give him a joyful welcome back too. So Ali walked into his arms and the prince petted her head. He told her that her elegance and beauty had grown, and that she had truly become a lady. His words made Ali flustered, and she did not know what to do next. She kissed him on the cheek, and the prince thanked her, telling her that he now truly felt at home. Jan asked Umberto not to tease Ali too much, but Umberto admitted that she had become even more beautiful, and that when she kissed him it felt like his heart would explode. He turned to Jan and said his expression said it all. A grown man talking about love, and worse, about Ali. It felt like a nightmare, but Umberto knew how he felt. He had been waiting for his moment for so long. He asked his brother if he had said anything, but Jan kept silent. Umberto then told him that he had a small request. Ali looked down at a book, and her maid asked what was wrong. Was she tired from shopping for academic supplies? Ali told her that was not it, but the maid could feel something strange. Ali explained that Prince Umberto had returned from studying abroad, and when she saw him for the first time after a year, things felt different. She told the maid how she hugged him, and how her heart would not stop pounding. The maid asked if Ali was truly talking about Prince Umberto and not Prince Loris. Ali gripped the tablecloth when she admitted it was true. The maid walked over to Ali, gently asking if her heart was still pounding. She told the girl to hold on to that feeling tightly, as it was the first step toward her happiness. Ali asked the maid named Mary what was the matter. It seemed like something was troubling her. Ali hugged her and told her she would always be there, and asked Mary if she would stay with her too. Mary promised she would, always by Ali's side. When Ali returned to her reading, Mary suggested she make protective charms for everyone. Since all her friends were either royalty or high-ranking nobles, they could easily find themselves caught up in dangerous conspiracies. Even in the academy, Ali and her peers could not be completely at ease. Ali thought it was a great idea, but there was one issue. She had no idea how to make one. Mary explained that when you infuse magic into gemstones, you need to imagine the effect you want to grant them. Ali thanked her, impressed that her maid truly knew everything. Despite Mary's elegance and beauty, she had once belonged to the secret division before becoming a maid, which explained her vast knowledge. Ali asked if any type of gemstone could be used, and Mary told her they could. But since they were protective charms, it was best if they were made into something that could always be carried. Ali imagined making them into small accessories, perhaps rings or bracelets. She decided to make one for Sita, CIA, Loris, Oresti, Rosario. Ali wrapped up the protective charms one by one, and her friends were over the moon with them. She made the twins pink matching rings, and for the boys she made gemstone earrings that matched the color of their eyes. Loris asked if the protective charms really worked since the stones were so small, but Ali reassured him that she infused them with magical energy. Granting a shield against physical attacks, the gemstones would also protect them from any unwanted mental influences. Loris jokingly told her that it sounded like a tempting offer from a cunning merchant. Rosario added that if Ali were a seller, she would have sold these charms in huge numbers. The twins brought up that when school started, they would all leave home and move into a dormitory, so having the charms would be very reassuring. Now that the group had turned 15, they would soon be joining the Mikaeli Royal Academy of Magic. The entrance exam results placed them all in the same class. Nobility alone was enough to enter the academy. However, this year, rumors were spreading about a student capable of using holy magic. The boys discussed how the girl was a baron's daughter, but the choice to become a saint was hers alone. Those who possessed holy magic were rare in this world, and what they knew about it was limited to purification and healing spells. Since monsters were few and there were others who could use healing magic to some extent, holy magic was not considered highly valuable. Yet it remained rare and precious. Umberto and John approached the group, and Umberto told Loris it seemed like he was really enjoying his conversation. The group asked Loris if he had told his brother about what they had spoken of, but Loris only showed Umberto the earring Ali had given him. He told his brother that they all had matching ones. Umberto turned to Ali and asked if he could get one too, and Ali already had a special gift box wrapped for him. Umberto opened it, smiling brightly. It was clear that he loved it when he thanked Ali for the kind gesture. He noticed immediately that the charm had spiritual significance. Ali explained that the charm reduced the impact of physical attacks and provided absolute protection against mental attacks. Umberto was impressed that Ali could make a charm that protected against threats this powerful. He told her it was amazing. Once the older princes were back in their chambers, Gian asked Umberto if he had always planned on keeping this from him. He asked the prince if Ali had made one for him as well. Umberto told his brother that it seemed Ali did not realize how talented she was, and that she could even communicate with animals. He wondered what motivated her to make these charms in the first place. Jan explained that it was supposedly her maid who suggested it, explaining that Ali's maid was trained in combat as well as domestic tasks. Umberto wondered if Ali had already realized the true power that she possessed. He told Jan to look at the box that held the gift. He noticed that the box came with a specially decorated ribbon just for him. He wondered if it meant that he was special to Ali. Jan encouraged his brother's delusions and told him without a doubt. The day of the opening ceremony began and students gathered for their welcoming assembly. The group all sat together, but the speeches were so boring that they nearly fell asleep. Ali knew that formal speeches were dull in every world, no matter the place or time. Loris told her to wake up since he did not want her drooling on her new uniform. The truth was, Ali had been thinking a lot about Prince Umberto recently, to the point where it was even messing with her sleep. Since they were moving into the dorms, Ali knew she would not get to see him as often anymore. And the more she thought about it, the more anxious she became. She remembered his words, how he said he was really excited for this experience. But all Ali could wonder was what he meant by excited. And then Ali saw him. Prince Umberto. Loris was equally as shocked to see his brother at the academy. The prince smiled and waved at Ali, who blushed. He walked onto the stage and introduced himself as Umberto Baltis, Crown Prince of the Kingdom. He explained that as part of his training as heir to the throne, he would be serving as an instructor at the academy for 1 year only. He told the students that he looked forward to spending this year with them all. Everyone wondered if it was true. The Crown Prince training as a professor? Had there ever been such a program before? The students had no idea, but Ali could only imagine this was what the prince meant when he said he was excited. Oresti told the group he thought all of this was planned on purpose, and Rosario admitted he felt the same way. Ali stayed quiet as the twins pointed out that this year would be very interesting. The students were then called to introduce themselves one by one. Umberto smiled, starting with his brother Loris, calling him incredibly popular. Loris introduced himself, wishing that he and the rest of the academy would have a wonderful year together. Ali noticed a few girls giggling, and she realized Loris must be popular despite everything. Ali went next, introducing herself as Alexandra Vistoriano. She told the school that she also looked forward to spending a great year with them all. Loris smiled, noticing how oblivious Ali was to how others saw her. Another student went next, a young girl with dark hair who stood up. She started by telling everyone it was a pleasure to meet them. It was then revealed that the girl was Delfina Soretto. She made it clear from the beginning that she was skilled in magic. She hoped to become friends with her classmates, despite most of them being high-ranking nobles. Ali gulped as memories came flooding back. It was her, the girl who charmed Loris and the others, stealing their hearts, then framed her, trapped her, and completely destroyed her character. Ali could sense Loris instantly behaving differently, gazing blankly at Delfina. Ali needed to shake him to his senses, as she worried that he had fallen under her magic again. She urged him to get hold of himself, and Loris told her it was not what she thought. It was just that his earring had heated up for a moment. At first, Ali was confused by what Loris was saying, but as her eyes scanned the room, she noticed that Oreste, Rosario, and even Umberto were fidgeting with their charms. Delfina scanned the room too, perhaps checking if her skills were working. In the privacy of the drawing room, the group gathered to discuss what had just happened. Oreste said that his charm had become hot as well, though it only lasted for a moment. Ali made them aware that this mystery occurred the moment the girl started introducing herself. As the group begged Ali for answers, Ali told them that it was nothing important, it was just that her charm never heated up. The boys asked why her charm had not reacted, and Loris cheekily suggested that it was because Ali was slow to notice things. Ali told him she would slap him. Loris sensed Umberto's footsteps and smiled when he saw his older brother behind him. Umberto asked if he had surprised them all, saying he intended for his cameo appearance to be a little gift. But the group remained fixated on the real issue. Why was Ali the only one who did not feel the charm's heat? Umberto suggested that it was because she simply was not affected by anything. In that moment, Delfina's magic completely avoided Ali as if she did not exist. Loris told Ali that his brother had massive magical energy, so it was hard to influence him. Ali could only think that Delfina was trying to ensnare her. What was it about Ali that made her so obsessed? Umberto petted her head and told her not to worry. No matter what happened, he promised to be by her side and protect her. Ali looked at Umberto, and she had to admit he was making her heart race again with the special treatment he always gave her. Umberto asked if she could make more charms, and Ali told him she could, but she would need a medium to create them. Umberto asked if that medium could be anything, and Ali said that as long as it was a gemstone, it would work. Loris asked his brother if he needed another charm, and Umberto nodded. Ali looked at the brothers and knew she could not let anything happen to them. Her thoughts raced to what Umberto had told her about someone dear. What did he mean by that exactly? Ali collapsed onto her dorm bed the moment school ended. Was she really smiling? She could not remember what she said to the prince, but was she overthinking how he smiled at her? How he kissed her on the cheek? The girl really thought that she was someone special to him. She collapsed to the ground and her maid Mary came immediately to help her. She told her maid that her chest was suddenly hurting. She began to cry before sobbing uncontrollably. Mary was infuriated to see Ali in such a state. Night fell, and the maid went off on her own side quest. She met with Umberto, who told her that he expected her to come. Mary looked like she wanted to kill the prince, holding a dagger to his neck. Umberto told her that he needed to speak to her, and Mary told him that she had no choice. She scolded him for hurting Ali this much. Umberto admitted that he knew he had hurt Ali and that he would apologize to her tomorrow. She asked him what he wanted from her after all this, and the prince asked if they could form an alliance. He told Mary that she and he wanted the same thing, to protect Ali. He did not think it sounded like a bad idea at all. Mary told the prince that he underestimated girls' feelings. She would only consider his offer if Ali forgave him. The only issue was that when Umberto set off to find Ali the next day, he could not find her. It was as if the girl had disappeared, not even attending the main hall session. If he happened to see her, she would run away immediately. His biggest hindrance was his brother, however. When Umberto approached Loris to ask about Ali, Loris refused to let him see her in consideration of her feelings. Loris told his brother that he would hand the talisman to Ali on his behalf. The twins were no help either, telling Umberto that they would not give him any hints about where she was. Umberto called Loris out for being difficult. He told him that for Ali the truth was completely different. He was made to be the villain of the story, and if this continued, then he knew Ali would abandon him completely. Jan was the only one who was warm to Umberto at this time, and Umberto was surprised that Ali's brother behaved normally. He told Umberto about the talisman, explaining that it was reinforced with strong magic. Umberto took it, but Jan warned him that he would not help until Ali decided to face him herself. Umberto looked down, telling his friend that he regretted what he did, but at that time he thought the only way to meet Mary was by angering Ali. He never imagined that she would avoid him like this. Jan turned to Umberto and asked, "To what extent do you love Ali?" He looked Jan in the eye and confidently told him that he did love her. Jan sighed. He had expected Umberto to be completely oblivious to his own feelings. Even though many women had tried to get close to the prince, he was never swayed. But with Ali, it was completely different. Jan asked him if he realized it, and his words made Umberto reconsider everything. Thanks to everyone's cooperation, Ali was able to completely avoid the crown prince. She made the most of her concealment magic, and even the animals outside were helping her. So far, she had not had to face him, but she knew she could not keep it this way forever. She wandered through the hallways in silence until she saw a familiar face. Although she had never met this boy in this life, she definitely felt a familiar presence in him, and he was staring at her intently. He asked Ali what the ring on her finger was, instantly captivated by it. Ali told him flatly that it was none of his business. This boy was odd. Ali apologized, not sure what had come over her. Something about the boy's aura was so inviting. The boy introduced himself as Severin Frigarini, and despite being a student, he was a member of the Mage Corps. Ali asked him if he was a student, and Severin told her that he was actually in his 3rd year. His father was the head of the mages and his talent was recognized, so as a result he was allowed to work there even though he was still a student. Ali then remembered that Severin had been present when she taught a lesson once. He asked her what her name was, and Ali introduced herself, telling him to feel free to call her by her first name. Severin said the same. When Ali headed back to her dorm, the twins were waiting for her at the dining table. They teased her for meeting someone at such timing. Ali told the twins that it was not what they thought, but she did ask if they both agreed on a date. She explained what happened with Severin and how he was interested in the ring, so all that happened was that they spoke about it over lunch. The twins applauded Ali for getting close to all the heirs of famous noble families. It turned out that Frigarini was not just the heir of a noble family, he was also the son of the head of the mages. Not to mention, his mysterious aura made him the center of attention. The twins remembered how people would gather around him at tea parties when they were kids. Ali briefly remembered seeing Severin's silhouette, but to her, Severin did not seem as mysterious as his reputation. Severin spoke to her with much admiration. He was amazed by the power of the ring and everything Ali told him about it. How it did not just protect against physical attacks, but mental ones too. Severin seemed super innocent, like a little kitten, despite being slightly older than Ali. He wondered if he could make something similar, and she told him that if he was capable of magic, then it should not be too difficult. Severin asked how she managed to make them. Ali began by telling him to hold on to the ring and pray sincerely. Severin took the ring and it lit up immediately, but he began to struggle and Ali wondered if it was due to the gemstone's size. When Severin looked again, he noticed another interesting feature of the ring. It was magically reinforced. He smiled, asking Ali how she was able to do that. Ali was not sure, but Severin was very interested in her visiting the mage corps sometime. He told her he would be happy to welcome her. Ali smiled, telling him it really sounded like fun. She told the twins all about what had happened, and they told her that the mage meetings were just sit-downs, talking about all things magic. Meanwhile, Umberto was fed up. He thought that his brother had no right to interfere in this matter. Loris was also being challenged by his friends who suggested that he should give his brother an opportunity to make things right. Umberto was angry that Loris could enjoy lunch with Ali and talk with her so casually. CIA smiled, telling him that she thought the prince liked Ali more than he wanted to admit. But before Umberto could respond, a familiar figure walked toward Ali. It was Lady Soreto. Ali turned to catch her eye and then the girl suddenly collapsed. Ali immediately got up to see Lady Soreto on the floor. She asked if she was alright and Soreto apologized, especially for spilling Ali's lunch on the floor. Ali told her not to worry about that, before asking Severin to help her to the infirmary. But Severin insisted he could carry her himself. Ali decided to go and give the doctor a heads up, leaving the boys alone with Delphina, who stared into their souls. She went on to say that she couldn't trouble the boys with this, but she couldn't move alone. She turned her gaze to Umberto, asking if he could carry her to the infirmary. Umberto looked at her and accepted, telling the others to return to their places. He threw Delphina over his shoulders, avoiding all eye contact. When Ali saw Delphina being carried by Umberto, she couldn't help but feel hurt. How did they end up alone together? The doctor pulled open a curtain, muttering that the scene didn't look serious. Umberto told Ali to leave with him and she reluctantly accepted. Of course, things were still tense between them. Ali told him how she was happy Delphina wasn't too sick and Umberto agreed, even though he wasn't falling for her tricks at all. He smiled, asking Ali if they could talk. He led her to his office, a large and clean room with some chairs and a desk. Umberto explained that he used part of the school building to handle his official duties. He told Ali to take a seat. Ali asked what it was that he wanted to talk about, before asking if he received the amulet. Umberto told her that he passed it on to the person who was dear to him, but he told Ali that there was something he wanted to tell her. Ali shrugged and said that as long as the person who mattered to him was safe, she would be happy to head off to class. But of course, Umberto grabbed her gently before she could run away again. His eyes began to prickle with tears. Ali was trying not to cry, asking him to let her go, but Umberto knew she needed to listen to him. Ali was not having it though. She asked him what else he had to say after that. She went as far as making an amulet for this person, and now the prince had given it to her, so it was over. She told him there was nothing more to hear. She pulled away and bolted through the doors, telling Umberto that she hated him. Umberto was left shocked. This was the first time he had ever felt afraid of losing someone this important. He knew he loved Ali more than he thought, but nothing was going the way he needed it to. Ali found a place of refuge under a tree. Animals gathered around the crying girl, as Ali asked if they were really there to comfort her. She told the animals about the harsh words she told the prince, and they listened silently but empathetically. Ali remembered how the prince tried his best to tell her something important, but she left him. She looked up at the sky to see the sun beating down on her. She knew that she couldn't stay hesitant forever. She needed to listen to Umberto again, clearly this time. Only then could she decide whether to let go of this or not. So Ali made her way back to his office. Umberto was relieved to see her back and he thanked her for coming and listening to him. Ali told him that she wanted to apologize for running away without giving him a chance to talk. But Umberto apologized for raising his voice at her, telling her it was entirely his fault. He looked into her eyes and asked if he could sit next to her. Ali welcomed him. Umberto began by saying it was painful to be rejected because of his own foolish actions. Ali apologized, but Umberto admitted it was his mistake. He told her that he lied to her about the amulet. It wasn't for someone dear to him, as he told her. The owner of the amulet was the second princess of the neighboring kingdom. She was currently studying here, but she was under the royal palace's protection. When Umberto said someone important, he meant someone important to this country, and any danger that came to the princess would be an issue. That was why he wanted Ali to make an amulet for her. He told her that all of this started because of the daughter of the Soreto family. He asked Ali if she remembered how the daughter used magic on them before. Umberto couldn't work out what type of magic, but he guessed it was an attempt to trap Ali. That was why he tried to gain Mary's trust. Umberto thought that if he explained this to Ali, she would have forgiven him, but he was ignorant of how much pain it caused her. He admitted he hated himself for hurting her. Ali looked at the prince before holding his cheek and hugging him. He said "ow" before laughing, and Ali told him she would forgive him. They embraced in a sweet hug. They both apologized to each other again, and Ali was surprised to see the perfect prince in a moment of vulnerability. It made her happy in a way. The prince was happy too that he didn't lose her. Ali squealed, telling him she couldn't breathe with how tight he was hugging her. The prince smiled and let her go, but he did have one request, for Ali to call him Bert. Bert, Ali said, questioning if he was really fine with her calling him that. And then she was in Bert's arms again. He told her he loved her. Ali was silent, and Bert told her to take her time. It was fine if she needed more time, but someday he wanted her to love him too. But Ali knew how she felt. She told him that she loved him too. Bert looked into her eyes and stroked her hair. Ali could scream. In her past life, she was always busy training and never paid attention to love, let alone manga, anime, or games. But she couldn't stop thinking about what happened between her and Bert the other day. He was like a real-life prince. Ali heard a loud Lady Vistoriano echo through her ears, and she looked up to see a girl. Was this the princess? The girl Bert mentioned was important? The girl smiled and introduced herself as Giulietta Cotarini. Giulietta explained that since she joined the school, she sensed a strange fatigue. She tried to ignore it at first, but then realized it would get worse when she was around certain people. Ali wondered if Giulietta thought of the same reason, and she did when she brought up Lady Soretto's group. But after she consulted Prince Umberto and received the charm, she regained all of her energy. Ali smiled. She had a feeling about this, but she couldn't deny that the girl was very cute. Still, she was relieved to hear that Bert gave her credit where it was due, as Giulietta knew Ali was the face behind the powerful gems. She told Ali that since the prince came to study in their kingdom, she had heard a lot about her, and she wanted to come speak with her. Giulietta asked about all of Ali's incredible achievements, how she managed to stop a rampaging magic horse, and how her combat skills were remarkable. That was why she chose to study at this academy. Ali thanked her, but the compliments kept coming. Giulietta admitted that when she first met Ali, she was taken aback by her beauty. In fact, she immediately felt shy. She apologized for being awkward at first, but Ali told her it was fine. In fact, she should be the one apologizing. Even though it was just a misunderstanding, she gave Giulietta a necklace without confirming its effects later, and that was her mistake. But Giulietta told her it was completely fine. She explained that this necklace was a precious gift her father gave her when she left her homeland, and now that Ali had infused it with magic, it had become priceless, almost like an eternal treasure for her. Ali smiled. Although she initially thought she never wanted to meet this girl, she was glad they spoke. Giulietta had one request. She wanted to become Ali's friend. Of course, Ali was more than happy for them to be friends. Their friendship blossomed in no time, and Ali was grateful to have another wonderful person by her side. As for her relationship with Bert, Mary suggested they keep it a secret until next year. But it seemed like everyone noticed anyway. During class, Ali asked why the boys participated in fencing while the girls took up dancing. The twins honestly told her that she was probably the only girl who would prefer fencing over dancing, but they admitted they would be interested in trying the sport at least, despite Oreste being furious if he found out. Giulietta told Ali that if she still wanted to try, she would be happy to join her. The dance instructor entered along with Bert, calling for the lesson to begin. Bert explained that he would be the girls' training partner today and asked if they could go easy on him. The girls smiled, joking that it might turn into a battle to win the prince. Ali told them confidently that she wouldn't be participating in that competition. She knew she couldn't afford to stand out or cause trouble here. The instructor suggested that the crown prince show the girls a demonstration since he was present, and Umberto smiled. He announced who he wanted his dance partner to be. Of course it was Ali. He took her hand and asked if she would let him have this dance before kneeling and kissing her hand. He swept her across the dance floor, and Ali surprised everyone with how well she could dance. They moved hand in hand, impressing everyone with how flawless they looked together. Bert whispered in Ali's ear, telling her that it seemed they wouldn't be able to dance together at an official event until next year. He said that if it were up to him, he would kiss her right now in front of everyone. He wouldn't mind showing her off. The girls grinned, knowing exactly what was going on, apart from Giulietta, of course. Ali and Bert bowed, and Ali told the prince they should continue practicing for the noble debut ball next year. But Ali and the prince had already impressed everyone with their performance. The two went their separate ways, with Ali grabbing CIA to dance with her. It was then that the girls felt something intense and warm on their fingers. It was their rings. Ali looked around, trying to work out what was happening. She noticed that all the girls in the class had gathered in awe of something. Ali had no idea what had just occurred as the atmosphere grew darker. She turned to see Bert with his hands in Delphina's. Ali watched, and she immediately remembered that this girl was someone who could become a saint. People discussed how Delphina's beauty and nobility surpassed anyone else. And of course, it was more than possible for her to become the prince's wife one day. They wondered if it was fate. The twins were equally confused, wondering since when everyone became Delphina's fans. The twins told Ali how their gems were heating up like never before. Ali then realized Delphina must be using magic. Ever since the lesson ended, everyone had been saying that Delphina would become a saint, and Loris told Allie they were even saying she would become Umberto's wife. Loris was completely against the idea, wondering why his brother would even consider Delfina. Allie told him it was clear that something unnatural was happening here. Back in Umberto's office, Mary met with him at night once again. Umberto asked Mary if she had grasped the situation, and Mary confidently said yes. She was sure that what was happening was undoubtedly the effect of allure magic. It was obvious through the sudden praise and the rapid shift in everyone's attitude. It was true that Lady Soretta was beautiful, but what happened was too much. Umberto agreed with her, but asked what she thought of the current situation. Mary told him that nothing seemed to match the events she knew, so she couldn't give a definitive answer. She suggested the best approach would be maintaining the current situation. Umberto asked if there was any danger to Allie, and Mary told him she couldn't find any reason why anyone would harm her. Umberto quickly understood why Allie and Mary wanted them to keep their relationship a secret. Allie's eyes lit up when she discovered it was time for her favorite sport, equestrian. Giulietta also loved horse riding. Oreste chuckled, noticing that it was only Giulietta and Allie who were dressed for the occasion, in riding boots and blazers. He told everyone how rare it was for a noble lady to seriously pursue equestrianism. It was time for the lesson to begin, and the instructor announced that since today was the first lesson, the focus would be on interacting with the horses. He continued to say that the Crown Prince had decided to join the lesson as an instructor. Bert came trotting in on the back of a horse. Allie couldn't help but notice how handsome he looked in the gear. It was expected for him to look amazing, of course. Bert began by teaching the students the differences between ordinary horses and magical horses. To help with the lesson, he brought along 2 of his own magical horses. He explained that they resembled normal ones but were actually a type of beast. Handling them required special training, and he warned not to touch them carelessly. Being in the presence of the magical horse brought back memories for everyone. They remembered Allie as the one who stopped a rampaging magical horse. Even Giulietta had heard the tale. But there was also a rumor that Lady Delfina might be able to communicate with magical horses easily. It was said that those who became saints were loved by animals as well, and perhaps she would be able to gain their trust quickly. Delfina told her new followers that she was not a saint yet, so there was no need to exaggerate. Her followers were convinced she would be the next saint, though, as she was capable of using holy magic. Allie turned to watch the interaction. It was obvious they were doing it again, acting strange around Delfina. She wondered what the students were planning as Delfina slowly approached one of the horses. Allie warned them to be careful, as the horse was dangerous. But Delfina shut her down quickly before snarkily asking if Allie was jealous of a power she did not possess. Allie shrugged, telling her that wasn't the case. Delfina continued forward, and Allie knew what she was doing was dangerous. Even the twins knew that if left alone, the magical horse would definitely attack her. They thought it best to wait and see, not like it wouldn't be funny watching Delfina get her ass beat. Delfina got on her tiptoes, asking the horse to stay calm. The horse freaked out, rearing immediately. Delfina shrieked, and Allie ran to the rescue. She stood in front of the horse, who instantly relaxed as she looked into his eyes. Bert came bolting over, scolding Delfina for not listening. He told her she needed to leave immediately as the horses would never trust her again. Delfina remained on the ground, utterly humiliated. Allie never expected the magical horses to get this angry. Even when whipped in the past, they never reacted like this. She was surprised to see the horse calm and relaxed, even offering her his neck to pet. Allie smiled, wondering if he remembered her. The students looked on in admiration as Allie bonded instantly with the horse, a sight Delfina couldn't stand to witness. When class ended, Allie gathered with her friends, curious about what they meant when they brought up dark power. She asked sheepishly if she was the Demon King now. Loris burst out laughing, and Allie smiled at her own silliness. The twins explained that after the magical horse incident, rumors spread everywhere. They reassured Allie that they would still love her, even if she was now the Demon Queen. Giulietta hugged her, agreeing that no matter how dark Allie got, she would always be her friend. Allie smiled, embracing her friend but wondering why she wasn't born a man. Sita asked what this dark power was supposed to be, but no one seemed to know. Allie guessed it didn't exist, and Loris wondered what it was even meant to do. Control monsters? The group discussed how there were magical wolves besides magical horses, but magical beasts in general were rare, so they were not often sighted. It was also said that a dragon lived in the northern volcano. The group grew excited, telling each other how amazing it would be if they could see it. They asked Allie if she could use her dark magic to summon it, just as a joke, of course. Their conversation was interrupted by footsteps, and Allie turned around to see Delfina. She looked at Allie and told her she wanted to thank her for what she did today. She added that since the equestrian lesson, people had started to call her a demoness or witch. Allie told her it was the first time she had heard that, and that calling her such names was harsh. Delfina shrugged, telling Allie she was only saying it for her own good. She suggested Allie take a break from school until the rumors stopped. Allie remained silent, but Julieta had heard enough. She confronted Delphina, asking if she was really suggesting Allie quit school over silly, baseless rumors. The boys were also quick to back Allie, telling Delphina she was wrong for insulting their friend. Delphina tried to keep her manipulation going, telling Loris that Allie was able to tame the horse with ease. She added that controlling magical beasts so effortlessly could only be linked to dark magic. Loris scoffed, asking Delphina if she was really claiming Allie possessed a dark power because of what happened. The others insisted it was ridiculous. If owning a magical horse meant possessing dark power, then what about Prince Umberto, the master of magical horses himself? Loris told Delphina it seemed like she had no idea about the truth. Alexandra gained the trust of magical horses because she once saved one when it was rampaging. Everyone who knew her understood this and had paid no attention to the rumors. The twins added that Allie was amazing as she was, and Julieta firmly told Delphina she would love Allie no matter what. Allie was overwhelmed by what her friends were saying, while Delphina acted none the wiser. She hurried off but turned to Allie, asking if she had heard the term noble villainess. Allie said she hadn't, and Delphina asked how she didn't know. Back in her room, Allie spoke with Mary about her day. Mary listened patiently as Allie told her how strange everyone had been behaving recently while she did her hair. It was then that Mary decided to tell Allie something important. Allie looked at her maid, wondering what it could be. Mary's deadly serious expression didn't help. Finally, Mary asked Allie if she was reincarnated. Mary explained to Allie how she fell off her horse when she was 5 years old. The accident left her bedridden for a while. At that time, Mary heard Allie speaking to someone, or to God. Allie told Mary the truth. She had already rewound time on 4 occasions, and now she was living through the 5th cycle. But at a certain point, the world would collapse, and everything would repeat. In a world where only despair existed, a change occurred. 5 repeated cycles, and in every one, Allie was engaged to Prince Loris. Mary had witnessed time after time how his heart changed the moment they entered the academy. Once Mary and Allie became aware that time was repairing itself, Allie did everything in her power to change her fate. But no matter how she tried, the result was always the same. Each time her heart would be drawn to Prince Loris again. Mary told her that falling in love with him 5 times and witnessing his betrayal 5 times was unimaginable. She couldn't believe how much pain Allie had endured. Mary revealed that in all 4 past cycles, Allie's fate was always the same. It was cruel. She was falsely accused of a crime she didn't commit, publicly condemned, and exiled to a faraway kingdom. Mary tried countless times to save her, but every time she was powerless. Even as she stood there, her body was frozen and unable to move. And then, for some reason, she would forget Allie completely and live her days as if nothing had happened. And then she would find herself once again as the maid of a little girl, at the start of a new cycle. Mary's eyes filled with tears. So it was true. The same thing repeated in the 5th cycle as well. Even when she ran to the scene of Allie's condemnation, she knew she would be powerless. But now it was not just another repetition. A change had occurred because of her actions. Allie's life took a decisive turn when she was only 5 years old. She died in her previous world, then met with the gods, and at that moment her soul swapped with the original Alexandra's. She recalled all those memories after falling off the horse. Since then, she had done her best to live as Alexandra. But when she sat down with Mary that evening, and Mary asked her if she had been reincarnated, everything changed for Allie. Mary had been by her side from the beginning, and she was the closest person to her. Allie turned to Mary, telling her that despite knowing everything, she had stayed with her. When Mary shattered everyone in the court of condemnation, all the chains that had bound her collapsed. At that moment, Allie realized things would change this time. But the changes exceeded her expectations by far. Allie asked Mary if she realized that back then, Allie was not the real Alexandra. Mary told her she did. She knew immediately. She became her lady, but she was no longer the person she once served. Mary looked down, apologizing for keeping silent about it. She walked over to Allie and knelt in front of her. She told her that when the world collapsed, she did not know how but felt a deep certainty that this was the chance for the real Alexandra's salvation. Allie told Mary that the real Alexandra had entered the cycle of reincarnation with the help of the gods. She was born into another world and was now living her new life. Mary was relieved to hear that. She admitted she had worried about the girl she once served. She thanked Allie, who asked if she was very different from the real Alexandra. Mary told her it was true. She was completely different. But whoever she was, Allie would always be the most precious person to her. She took hold of Allie's cheek and Allie pulled her in for a hug. She felt horrible that this was the fate Mary had witnessed over and over again. But it seemed the events had changed drastically, especially for Allie herself. Mary agreed, but she mentioned that the most significant change was that she was no longer Prince Loris's fiancé. Before, no matter how hard Allie tried, her fate seemed unavoidable. Allie knew that back then, the one who condemned her was Loris before the reset. But now she considered Loris a friend. The though his true nature was good. She asked about Oresti and Rosario. Had they always been like this too? Mary answered that in every cycle they were engaged to Lady Felicia and Lady Felicita, and their friendship with Allie never changed. However, with Lady Soretto's arrival at the academy, everyone fell under her spell. All the engagements were shattered as a result. Even Allie's bond with the twins broke and they ended up abandoning her too. It made sense now why Delphina did not cast a spell on Allie, as it had always been her plan to isolate her completely instead. Allie was furious and asked Mary why she had not just stopped at one slap back then. Mary and Allie chuckled at the memory, but Allie had one last question. What about Bert? Why had there never been anything between him and Alexandra? Mary confirmed that there had been hardly any interaction between Bert and Allie, let alone an engagement. She remembered that at the time he had not been engaged yet. Mary confirmed that the relationship Allie now had with Bert was one she had chosen for herself and built through her own efforts. Thanks to the talisman this time, the key figures had not fallen under the influence of magic, and relationships changed quickly. All of this was thanks to Mary's advice. Mary turned to Allie and promised her that this time she would not allow her to be unhappy. But Allie told her not to worry. This time, they would all find true happiness. In the carriage, Mary was exhausted. She could not help but think of what had happened. Even though Lady Soretto was still trying to interfere, no major incidents had occurred and the days passed peacefully. Allie had not gone out for a while, except for attending lessons, but that was also one of the duties of a duke's daughter. She attended a tea party with the daughters of other ducal families. But as expected, their conversations were only about love and emotions. Even worse, they were all candidates to become Bert's fiancé. Allie had to listen to all the conversations about Bert and try to stay unbothered and cheerful. She knew she needed to keep her relationship with him a secret for a while, but that made her feel a little guilty too. Mary kicked back and relaxed in the carriage. It was a very long journey home. Back at the dormitory, Bert and Jan were called to get Allie since she had fallen asleep in the back of the carriage. Jan smiled, telling Bert how adorable she was. Bert knew immediately how much he loved her. She was sleeping so peacefully, and Jan playfully asked if Allie had cast her spell on Bert too. Bert stayed quiet, but Jan quickly told him that if it was the case, he approved. He just hoped that this spell would last a lifetime. He asked Bert to carry Allie to her room, and Bert did so with a smile on his face. She really seemed exhausted, probably from playing the role of mediator between the girls competing for Bert, Jan suggested. Jan and Bert entered Allie's room, and Jan asked Bert a strange question. Had Mary ever done anything wrong to the prince? Bert asked why he wanted to know, and Jan explained that when it came to Allie, Mary was never lenient. She might even send a death threat, even if it was directed at Bert personally. Bert smiled, telling Jan he could easily imagine that. Jan told him as long as he did not intend to do anything inappropriate to Allie, he was safe, so there was nothing to worry about. Not yet, Bert said foolishly. They placed Allie on the bed and Mary thanked him. Bert spent another second looking at Allie but was quickly met by Jan warning him not to do anything improper. But all Bert could think about was how in love he was with Allie, to the point it hurt. Jan asked what his friend meant. Bert told him that he wanted to see her every day and spend every moment with her. When he saw her laughing happily with Loris and the others, he felt warm but jealous at the same time. Every day, it was as if, "I love you" was rewritten in his heart again and again. Jan chuckled, asking the prince if he was sure Allie had not enchanted him. His love for her made him more human than ever, and Jan thought it was wonderful. Bert knew it was true. He loved himself as he was now. He turned to the sleeping Allie, caressing her hair. He told her that he would not let anything stand in her way. The next part of the story takes a dramatic turn as Umberto pays Allie's father a visit to ask for her hand in marriage. The Duke thought Umberto was joking and couldn't believe it when he realized the prince was completely serious about the request. Allie woke up in the middle of the heated discussion. She told Giulietta and the twins the whole tale, and they found it hilarious that Bert dared to visit the Demon King, also known as Allie's father. That nickname didn't come from nowhere. Allie's father was stern, composed, and had a very intimidating presence at work. Rosario asked what happened next, and Allie continued. It turned out Bert declared that he and Allie had already made their feelings clear to one another. He told the Duke that Allie was the one for him and asked again if her father would accept his proposal. But the Duke refused. And in that moment, the room went dark. Allie teased her friends, saying the rest of the story would have to wait. Sita couldn't believe how protected Allie was, while Oresti was more focused on how clearly in love Bert was with her. Loris and Giulietta listened, but it was obvious they were more interested in each other than the story. Allie couldn't help but notice this new energy. Still, one question lingered in her mind. When did Bert start loving her? That was something she still couldn't answer. Umberto was handsome, kind, and seemingly perfect, but sometimes he showed a softer, more sensitive side. The closer Allie grew to him, the deeper her feelings became. Could it be that Bert had loved her from the very beginning? Allie thought that was impossible. Winter break soon arrived and the students went ice skating on the frozen lake. Allie couldn't help feeling nostalgic. In her past life, she had loved skating as a child. She took Giulietta's hand, spinning around the lake, cheering and complimenting her friend on her progress. Loris joined in, offering to lead Giulietta next. Giulietta blushed, but Allie encouraged her to go. Loris was an excellent skater after all. Then Loris asked Allie if she knew the secret of the ice. Confused, Allie admitted she didn't. Just then, she sensed some movement and looked down to find a fox by her feet. Loris explained that the ice was reinforced with magic by the magic core. In the past, someone had tried to break it to harm others, so now it could only be destroyed by magic. Allie wondered if that meant it was dangerous to skate there. What would happen if it cracked? And then the unthinkable happened. The ice began to split under her skates. Allie screamed, thinking this was the end. But then, out of nowhere, a familiar figure appeared. It was Bert. How had he gotten there so fast? He grabbed her, and within seconds, they were safe on the grass bank, Allie in his arms. They heard shouting. A boy had fallen through the ice. Oresti called out, and Bert quickly used his powers to pull the boy out. So it was true. Someone had tried to deliberately break the ice. A trap had been set. Bert stood before the drenched, shivering boy, asking if he understood what had happened. While Bert questioned him, Giulietta and Sita noticed sudden movement in the forest. It looked like Delfina and her companions. Bert decided to continue questioning the boy later at the palace and told him to get warm and dry first. Allie, still shaken, turned to Bert, confused by how he appeared so suddenly. She asked why he was there and how he managed to reach her so fast. Bert looked down and explained it was because he heard her scream. He had used a transfer spell that activated when a specific condition was met, her voice. He had also enchanted the earring Allie gave him, allowing him to teleport instantly if she was ever in danger. Loris overheard, unsure what to say. Allie could only laugh. It was a bit stalkerish of Bert, but she was touched that he cared so much, and he had saved her from a terrible fall. She smiled and thanked him, and Bert looked thrilled to have helped his princess. Later that day, Bert returned to the castle to question the boy. But to his surprise, the boy seemed just as confused as everyone else. He explained that he had been with Delfina and her companions when he suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to submerge Allie in the lake. Acting on that impulse, he cast a spell. Bert placed the boy under house arrest until a punishment could be decided. As Bert closed the door, he realized how dangerous charm magic could be, how it could make someone act completely out of character. And now it was clear the enemy had begun targeting Allie. Bert knew it was time to strike back. Umberto had faced several assassination attempts since childhood. His father was a wise king, and because he was surrounded by competent advisors, enemies often saw targeting Umberto as a way to break through the kingdom's defenses. From a young age, Umberto knew he needed to grow strong to protect himself. But as a result, he struggled to trust others. Eventually, he closed his heart to everyone, except his family and Janice. He believed he would live his life wearing a fake smile forever, until he met Allie. Ever since then, he'd found himself genuinely happy, smiling without even realizing it. Umberto knew he could never let anyone hurt Allie again, and for the places his eyes couldn't reach, he understood he needed to trust others to protect her. Loris announced to the group that lessons would resume the next day, warning them to be extra cautious around Delfina and her friends. The group couldn't believe Delfina was bold enough to try harming Allie directly, and none of them could predict what she would do next. Oresti admitted he could never attack a girl, but this one. Allie laughed softly, reassuring the boys that she could take down Delfina herself if it came to that. Rosario agreed that Allie could hold her own, but there might be times when she'd need help. Still, for now, they all agreed to avoid unnecessary risks. The twins made a solemn vow never to leave Allie's side, and Giulietta joined in. Allie thanked her friends warmly, though deep down she felt a flicker of worry. Not for herself, but for Delfina. Allie was grateful to have her friends' support, but there was still one secret she hadn't revealed. She knew she needed to be ready for what was coming. When the holiday ended and classes resumed, the atmosphere at school had shifted dramatically. Delfina had become the star of the new semester, though everyone seemed slightly afraid of her. There was something off, something in the air that felt heavy. On the first day, Umberto was quick to appear at Allie's side, guiding her gently through the hall. Then, with a strangely serious tone, he asked if he should leave something in her care. Before Allie could reply, he suddenly pulled her into a warm embrace. She froze, her face turning crimson, wondering what on earth made Bert hug her so suddenly in the middle of school. She gasped, asking what was wrong. Bert smiled softly, explaining that he just felt the urge to hold her, and at that moment the entire atmosphere seemed to shift. The twins commented that the room felt lighter around Allie. She had no idea what she'd done, but the group applauded her anyway. Then Allie came face to face with Delfina herself. Delfina smirked, remarking that Allie seemed very close to Prince Umberto. Allie simply shrugged, saying they were childhood friends. But Delfina's next words made no sense. She told Allie that their friendship wasn't part of the original sequence of events. The group froze, staring at Delphina, waiting for her to explain, but she quickly backtracked, turning sharply on her heel and walking away. Oreste frowned. Delphina's unpredictability made everyone uneasy. Ali, though, was more concerned. What did Delphina mean, and why was she targeting her in the first place? In truth, Delphina had been secretly reapplying attraction magic on her followers. The group could only wonder what her next move would be. The next day brought even more shock. Delphina appeared arm in arm with Severin. Ali couldn't believe her eyes. How did he, of all people, fall under Delphina's spell? Oreste pointed out that Severin had a protection charm, so why wasn't it working? Severin caught Ali's gaze and waved. Curious and concerned, she walked over, asking how he was, and how he'd gotten so close to Delphina. Severin explained that he was interested in the holy magic Lady Delphina practiced, and that was how their friendship began. Delphina quickly added that he was the one who wanted to be friends with her, and over time, they grew closer. Ali decided not to press further and simply nodded. Delphina led Severin away, casting Ali a chilling look over her shoulder. Ali couldn't understand it. Severin was still wearing his protection ring. Maybe he really was just curious about holy magic. Over the next few days, Severin and Delphina were seen together often, sparking rumors that they were dating. Severin kept assuring Ali he was fine, easing some of her worries. If they truly were together, Ali hoped it might actually be a good thing, as long as Delphina stopped spreading hate. A few days later, during magic class, the group demonstrated their growing skills. Ali praised her friends, and Loris explained that the day's task was to combine two magical elements to create something new. The twins, who had improved greatly through training with Ali, decided to create an ice rabbit inside a clay cage. Giulietta planned to form a butterfly using water magic. Ali, however, crafted something spectacular. A radiant light burst from her hands as majestic horses made of ice and fire galloped above her. The boys were stunned and asked how she'd managed such a feat. Ali giggled, unaware of Delphina's jealous gaze. Delphina approached, announcing it was her turn. She reminded them that her only magic was holy magic, so she couldn't create anything visible. Placing her hands together, she released a wave of dark energy that rippled through the room. Ali gasped as the air grew heavy. Her friends looked distressed. Their protective gems were heating up again, so much that Giulietta had to remove hers. Ali couldn't let this continue. She clasped her hands, channeling her own magic. Light burst forth, clashing against Delphina's energy and dispelling it completely. The atmosphere brightened and the group cheered. Ali quickly checked if everyone was all right. The twins nodded, amazed that her magic had neutralized Delphina's. The instructor scolded Delphina for using such dangerous power, issuing her an official warning. Defeated once again, Delphina stormed out, burning with rage. She glared back at Ali, hatred twisting her face. How could everyone protect her and despise me, she thought bitterly. Ali was never supposed to be the one in the spotlight. Delphina's eyes narrowed. This wasn't over. That night, Ali dreamt of the dragon that lived in the northern volcano. She tossed and turned until morning, unable to shake the image from her mind. When school began, Ali was suddenly pulled into Bert's arms. He asked why she was so tense, then swept her up effortlessly, carrying her in front of everyone. Though embarrassed at being held like a princess, Ali couldn't deny the comfort and warmth she felt in his arms. Bert thanked her softly, telling her that thanks to her actions, they had avoided the worst-case scenario. Ali sighed and hugged him back, pressing her cheek against his chest and breathing in his familiar scent. Bert blinked in surprise, calling her name when she held him so tightly. The truth was, Ali had finally accepted his love. She was still shy, but her heart no longer resisted it. Without thinking, she asked when he had first started loving her, only realizing a second later how bold the question sounded. Bert looked into her eyes and said that when the time came, he would tell her the answer. Ali's cheeks flushed a deep red and he chuckled, teasing that her face was as red as a strawberry. Ali admitted softly that he made her heart pound so fast it felt like she might die from nervousness. Smiling, Bert gently cupped her face and pressed a kiss to her forehead, calling her adorable. Ali's heart fluttered. She still wasn't used to this kind of intimacy. But Bert wasn't done yet. Still holding her face, he closed his eyes and leaned closer. Ali felt like she might explode. Then, before she could react, he pulled her in and kissed her, right there on her bed. Ali's breath caught as she instinctively kissed him back. When Bert finally pulled away, she was completely flustered, staring up at him in disbelief. He smiled softly, saying she looked too cute but that he didn't want to lose control, so they should stop there. Ali could barely think straight. Could she ever get used to this? 2 months passed since that unforgettable day, and Delphina was still only under a strict warning. She defended herself by insisting she merely wanted to heal everyone with holy magic, which was apparently enough to stall any real investigation. One afternoon, while wandering the halls, Ali bumped into Severin. He greeted her warmly, since it had been a while since they last spoke. He told her that if she was looking for Lady Delphina, she wasn't around anymore. When Ali asked what he meant, he explained that there was no need for him to spend time with her now. As expected, Ali thought, he must have approached Delphina for a reason. Severin then asked if they could be friends again, like before. Ali smiled and agreed, figuring he had just been busy lately, which explained his strange behavior. But then, the hallway darkened. A familiar chill ran through Ali. These premonitions were never wrong. Later, when the group gathered, Sita announced that rumors were spreading about Ali and Severin. Oresti scolded her for entertaining nonsense, but Loris frowned, saying if they were only rumors, he would have laughed them off. At first, people whispered that Severin had abandoned Delphina. But when the story shifted, claiming he had changed his feelings toward Ali, the atmosphere became tense. Supposedly, one of Delphina's followers saw Ali speaking kindly to him. Oresti sighed, saying there was no doubt Delphina's circle was furious now. Ali muttered that it felt like an open invitation for them to vent their anger, and Rosario agreed. Meanwhile, Delphina sat weeping on the stairwell, and Berto happened to pass by and caught sight of her. He sighed. Though he knew he had duties, part of him wanted to ignore them all and go home. Still, he approached, asking gently if something was wrong. Delphina looked startled, then collapsed dramatically at his feet. Bert blinked, apologizing, thinking maybe he had startled her. He asked why she was crying. Between sobs, Delphina claimed she and Severin had been dating and were even discussing engagement, but now he had changed his mind. She wailed that Severin had chosen Alexandra and that she could never compete with her. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched at Bert's arm, crying about her heartbreak. Bert sighed, unimpressed. He told her bluntly that if it hurt, she should forget him, and she would find someone better in time. Delphina's eyes lit up with sudden hope. Misunderstanding completely, she declared that she had feelings for him now. Fortunately, Loris appeared just in time, quickly pulling Berto away. Once they were clear, Loris apologized, asking if he had interrupted. Bert exhaled in relief, admitting he had been seconds away from physically pushing her hand off him. Loris laughed, teasing that his brother was too strict. Bert smirked, reminding Loris that this same girl had once tried to harm Princess Julieta. Loris's face turned pink and Bert grinned knowingly. "Am I wrong?" he teased. "I know everything about my little brother." He patted Loris on the head affectionately, telling him how wonderful it was that he liked Julieta, an honest and kind girl. Bert smiled, adding that she would get along well with his future wife too. Bert was truly happy for his brother. After all, he could not allow anyone to take Ali from him. So it was true. Loris and Juliet were dating. During their dance lesson, when Loris told Bert about it, he spoke with complete seriousness. Of course, Berto was overjoyed. It wasn't just because two of his dearest friends had found happiness, but also because he was sure things were no longer the same as before the reset. During dance class, Ali congratulated Loris on his news, assuming he was planning on getting married in the future. Loris told her that marriage was his goal, but first he would visit Juliet's country during the next holiday to make an official greeting. Ali was thrilled, knowing that meant he and Julie wouldn't have to be apart after graduation. She hugged Juliet tightly, believing that this time, everything really would be all right. Her vision was coming to life, a future where everyone was happy. Footsteps approached, and a familiar voice asked if he was included in that happy ending. It was Bert, asking Ali for a dance. Her face lit up when she saw him and she took his hand. As they swayed around the room, Bert told her there was something he had just realized. He admitted that he was a very jealous person. Bert explained how he noticed other guys asking her to dance, something Berto could not stand. Loris was fine, but other men were not. He confessed he didn't want anyone but him to touch her. Ali looked into his eyes and asked if this was really the right time for such a confession. But Bert replied, if not now, then when? He told her that even if she tried to run away, he wouldn't let her anymore. Ali stared at him, unsure whether to be frightened or amused by his possessiveness. Then she smiled softly and told him she wanted to kiss him. Right now. Their friends watched them dance with admiration. Of course, they all knew the truth about Bert and Ali, but someone else was watching too, Delphina. She remembered her earlier encounter with Bert and how obvious it was that he didn't care about her. Rage burned in her chest. Later that day, Delphina went as far as tricking Ali into meeting her on the roof of the old abandoned school building. Ali faced Delphina, who stood there with two followers by her side. She asked why Delphina had manipulated her into coming there. One of the girls admitted she was only following orders, claiming she told Ali a cat was in danger in the building. Ali crossed her arms, saying it seemed Delphina had lost many friends. She asked if Delphina had fought with someone. Delphina snapped that it was all Ali's fault. She accused Ali of pretending to be innocent when all of this started because of the strange glow she released. Ali asked if she meant during the magic lesson, and Delphina yelled that ever since that day, everyone had stopped approaching her. She accused Ali of using dark powers. Ali sighed, realizing Delphina still hadn't dropped the dark magic claims. She told her there was no such thing as dark powers. But Delphina insisted that Ali had driven her friends away, calling her annoying. Ali frowned, wondering what this girl was even trying to say. Was Delphina really trying to make her play the villain in this story? Delphina admitted that she had always used this method to complete all the routes and thought it would work this time too. But it didn't. Allie blinked, wondering what on earth Delphina was talking about. Delphina said she had decided to change her strategy. Instead of isolating Allie completely like before, she realized the easier solution would be to take control of Allie directly. Suddenly, a powerful force surged through the air. Allie's ring burned against her finger and she clenched her hand in pain. Was Delphina really trying to use gravity magic on her? But the power was far stronger than expected. Delphina laughed cruelly, asking Allie how it felt to be her puppet. Allie blinked and shrugged, saying she felt no different. In fact, she didn't feel anything strange at all. Delphina's eyes widened as she realized her magic wasn't working. She cried out, demanding to know why her spells never worked. She had tried countless times yet failed each time. Panic spread across her face as she realized nothing was going according to plan. Allie wasn't Loris's fiancé either. Allie told her plainly that she wasn't because that was never the case in the first place. But Delphina shouted, asking why things were different this time. She glared at Allie with hatred, and Allie's calm reaction only made her angrier. Allie asked if she could leave now, but Delphina continued, exposing more of herself. She confessed that she had planned to win the heart of Prince Umberto, but when she met him he didn't even notice her. Then, with trembling lips, she asked Allie if she was really someone reincarnated from a past life. Allie looked down, silent, as Delphina pressed further. She demanded to know if Allie understood the truth about this world and the otome game. Then everything clicked for Allie. This world, the one she had been so confused by, was an otome game. She realized that if you refused to play the villain, everything would fall apart. Delphina shouted that Allie was doing everything wrong. She wasn't supposed to be close to Umberto. She was supposed to be Loris's fiancé. Everything had deviated from the original story, and unexpected events kept happening. Delphina wailed that these new twists had left her isolated. She begged for the story to return to normal. Allie stayed quiet. She knew Delphina was completely delusional. She just needed to find a way out of here quickly. But what Delphina said next was the most disturbing thing she had ever heard. She told Allie that if this was the case, then there was no other choice. Lady Alexandra needed to die. Allie had to repeat what Delphina just said. She really wanted her dead? Delphina laughed wickedly. She told Allie that if she died, everything would probably go back to normal. Of course, Allie told her that her plan was ridiculous, but Delphina only grew angrier. Allie wondered if this girl was even sane. Of course, she wouldn't just agree to die. Even Delphina's followers began to bite their lips awkwardly. Delphina told Allie that if she wasn't willing to end her own life, then she would help her out. She shouted at her followers, ordering them to seize Lady Alexandra. Her followers hesitated, saying this was going too far, but Delphina was deadly serious. She warned them that if they got in her way, she would start with them first. She looked at the girls with the same evil expression and they gasped in fear. Allie realized Delphina was amplifying her charm magic even further. One of the girls began to run and Allie screamed at her to be careful. They were heading straight toward a drop. Allie rushed to stop her, managing to push the girl away from the edge in time. But as a result, Allie slipped and fell backward, off the building. The last thing she saw was the girl reaching out her hand before she fell. Allie tried to scream, but only a few weak words escaped her lips. She thought of Umberto. She couldn't call for him, or he would come, and they would both fall to their deaths together. Suddenly, Allie felt something beneath her as she free fell. She braced for the cold, hard ground, but instead she landed on something soft. She quickly realized she wasn't on the ground at all. She was still in the sky, flying. Reaching down, she felt deep black fur and everything clicked. She was on the back of a dragon. Allie genuinely thought she might have died and gone to heaven. The dragon spoke, saying she was quite interesting as he carried her on his back. Allie wondered what the voice was inside her head, but it told her it was him, the sacred beast. Allie pointed out that he looked like a dragon, and he confirmed that was because he was one. Allie couldn't believe what was happening. She remembered her lesson in her dreams. The dragon that lived in the northern volcano. The dragon told Allie it was all true, and she quickly realized this magical creature could read her mind. He told her he could feel the saint's energy, so he descended from the mountain. As they flew, Allie asked the dragon who the saint was. He replied that it was her. Allie bore the blessing of the god. Allie was lost for words. Memories flooded back of the last time she spoke with the god. How he said he would grant her his blessing, increase her magic, and allow her to wield all elements. Allie wondered if this meant she was an overpowered character, and the dragon told her that was exactly why she was the saint. Allie could hardly believe it. She was a saint? The dragon explained that he was the guardian who protected the saint blessed by the god, and she could call him Custody. Allie smiled, introducing herself as Alexandra, though he could call her Allie. She thanked him for saving her. Custody told her that those who tried to harm her must be punished, and Allie knew Delphina's behavior could no longer be ignored. The dragon asked if he could turn them into ashes, and unfortunately Allie said no. though everyone would have loved to see Delphina light up like a candle. Instead, Ali suggested they assess the situation. One of the girls had collapsed in tears and another was frozen in place. Delphina could be dealt with by Bert. Ali looked down and saw Delphina looking seemingly victorious. She asked Custody if they could see him. Custody told Ali he had cast a camouflage spell, so they couldn't see either of them. Ali thought about how she almost died, was saved by a dragon, discovered she was a saint, and now had a sacred beast as her friend. She knew she needed to get Bert. She told Custody that he was at the castle for official duties. So Ali and Custody made their way to the castle. Bert and Jan could not believe their eyes when Ali arrived riding an actual dragon. Their shocked reactions were expected. They asked where the dragon came from and said they couldn't keep him there. Ali chuckled, realizing how rare it was to see Bert and her brother so flustered. She managed to calm them down and told them her story. It also helped that Custody could shrink himself into a cute little dragon. Of course, Bert was enraged over what happened on the roof. He now knew Delphina had deliberately chosen to attack Ali when he was away, even putting her own followers at risk. Ali smiled, touched to see both men passionately defending her. But Bert asked why she didn't call for help when she was falling. He wondered if it was because she didn't want him teleporting instantly to her side. Ali admitted that was the reason. If she had screamed while falling and Bert came, he would have fallen too, and she could never allow that. Bert looked into her eyes and hugged her. He was happy she thought of him but told her she was mistaken. If she was in danger, he would always find a way to save her without risking himself. He made Ali promise that next time she was in danger, she would call for him and let him protect her. He promised that nothing would make her lose him. Jan smiled softly, listening to their sweet conversation from behind the door. Bert thanked Ali again, and Ali knew that everyone truly cared about her. She needed to return their love and care. She petted Custody and called for both Bert and Jan. Then she told them seriously that there was an important matter she needed to discuss with them. Ali, Jan, and Bert took a seat as Ali began to speak. She told them that she had carried something deep in her heart that she never dared to reveal. If she had to name it, it would be nothing but guilt. Memories came rushing back to her of her past life, and Ali did not even know where to begin. When she was reborn into this world, she lived with all her might as Alexandra. As time passed, she found herself surrounded by precious things and people who became an inseparable part of her life. Her brother, her parents, Mary, her friends, and of course, Bert. They all had become Ali's very life itself. She told them that she was not the real Alexandra. She wanted to reveal the truth to them and be accepted in this world for who she truly was. She wept into her hands, apologizing for keeping this truth from them for so long. Jan comforted Ali, thanking her for confiding in them. He told her that although he couldn't fully comprehend it right away, he was certain that Ali never lied to them. He knew how long she must have carried this secret and how painful it must have been, but no matter what, she was his sister. And he loved her. Jan asked Ali what happened to the original Alexandra, and Ali told them that she was smiling and watching over her, even thanking her for changing everything. And now it seemed like she had entered the cycle of reincarnation and was walking an entirely new path. Jan smiled, reassured that who was once Alexandra was doing well. Bert walked closer to Ali and also thanked her for confiding in them. He told her sternly that no matter who she was, his love for her would never change. Ali smiled as Bert whispered into her ear. He told her that he wanted to stay quiet out of respect for Jan, but even he only wanted to protect her. Ironically, Jan scolded Bert for getting too close to his sister. While the three were deep in conversation, Custody was loving the drama. He laughed, telling Ali this dessert was incredible, and he would definitely be back to try it again. Ali asked Custody if he was supposed to stay in the volcano. Custody admitted he did not like it there at all. He was warmly welcomed back to the palace any time. Bert did ask why the dragon needed to sit on Ali's lap, however, and Jan chuckled, asking Bert if he was really jealous of a dragon. Ali told Jan she didn't mind as long as they didn't try to harm Custody. She was just relieved that she finally managed to talk to them. Later that evening, the overwhelming day got the better of Ali and she cried herself to exhaustion. Mary stayed with her. Bert was happy that Ali was with someone, and Jan asked if there was anything the prince was hiding. Jan told Bert that he would be okay with it if he didn't tell him, but he should at least tell Ali when the time came. Bert swore to Jan that he would never hurt his sister. But for the sake of protecting Ali, there was another task that needed to be done. He asked Jan to accompany him to the church. The next day was Umberto's special lecture as students gathered in the main hall. The topic was holy magic, and Delphina was unnaturally excited. The students looked at her, half in confusion and half in fear over what she was planning next. The twins commented that it was rare for classes to be held outside the classroom, and they also heard something happened yesterday. It was then that all the girls noticed how they hadn't seen Ali recently and wondered if something happened to her. They were all very worried about their friend. But then, Ali walked into the hall looking fresh as a daisy, with Bert by her side. Delphina looked like she had seen a ghost. Ali warmly greeted everyone good morning, and she was met by Delphina's followers who collapsed at her feet. They told her that they had no idea how to thank her for what she did yesterday. They couldn't believe their eyes seeing her now. They apologized for everything they did to her in the past, and said they didn't even deserve to ask for her forgiveness. They pleaded for Ali to punish them however she saw fit. Loris and Rosario were amused over how crazy the girls were acting, playfully asking Ali if she had finally decided to reveal her true side as the Demon Queen. Ali asked the girls to relax. She knew none of this was their fault, and it was her who decided to save the girl from falling. She told them they didn't need to feel guilty. Of course, they made a mistake, but at least they owned up to it. Ali walked away as the girls sobbed. She turned to Delphina asking why she looked so pale. Was she shocked to see Ali alive? Delphina lied that she was only relieved to see her safe, but Ali wasn't falling for it. She told Delphina that her attitude today seemed completely different from yesterday, not to mention how Delphina told Ali she literally wanted her to die. But as they could see, even though Ali was at death's door, she survived. Ali told everyone how she experienced something new for the first time. Delphina's magic. But it didn't work as intended. Instead of Ali being under her control like a puppet, she was left indifferent. Loris confronted Delphina about the spell she used. If she tried to influence Ali like a puppet, then Delphina must have been using enchantment magic, also known as forbidden magic. Delphina tried to dig herself out of her hole, but all her excuses fell on deaf ears. The entire school was disgusted by what they were hearing. Delphina told them that what they were accusing her of was impossible. But Jan and Bert came to Ali's defense too. Ali smiled, realizing she had an army behind her. Jan, Bert, even Mary and Severin stepped in to help. It was time for Delphina to reveal her true self. Delphina insisted that she could only use holy magic and lied that she knew nothing about enchantment magic. Jan introduced himself as Ali's brother and firmly told Delphina that firstly, not everyone who possesses holy magic is necessarily a good person. Second, there is only one saint in each era. Not to mention, they searched the church for holy magic along with the prince and managed to uncover some important facts. The person granted the title of saint cannot use enchantment magic because those who possess this type of magic are not loved by animals or beasts. Only those whom God has blessed are loved by them. Jan told her that wielders of holy magic can become saints. And now that he mentioned it, Delphina was much disliked by the horses. Ali, on the other hand, was often approached by animals, foxes, and small birds. Delphina shouted that she had never heard of Ali being in possession of holy magic. It was then that Mary also got involved, telling Delphina that when Ali was 5, she received divine blessings due to a certain incident which increased her magic energy and allowed her to use all types of magic. Before she entered the academy, she created protective charms for her friends, charms that reduce the effects of physical and mental attacks. And only a wielder of holy magic can create these charms. Loris asked Delphina if she knew what all this meant, that the people who wore these charms, including Janice and himself, were 9 people in this room. Delphina looked stunned at the news, asking what exactly this meant. Loris told her it meant that none of them were affected by her magic. Of course, Delphina whined that she never used enchantment magic, and they expected her to say that, which was why they had gathered solid proof with the help of one student. That student was Severin. Severin stepped forward and Delphina looked like she was going to cry. Severin told her he would get straight to the point, asking her if she knew what device this was. He pulled his necklace off, revealing a magical device. Severin explained that it could capture and record events and had been programmed to start recording when enchantment magic was activated. He showed Delphina what was captured, projecting the video onto the screen. The video showed a red mist expelling around Delphina, which was the enchantment magic. To make matters worse, it showed students quickly shifting their behavior, everyone but Bert and Severin being affected. Realizing she had been exposed, Delphina took her anger out on Ali, turning to try and hurt her. Ali shouted for Custody, who was outside the hall in no time. Students shrieked, noticing that a fully grown dragon was outside the school. Ali opened the window and handed Custody a magical sphere. Delphina was delighted, seeing this as a new opportunity to convince everyone that Ali was nothing but a wielder of darkness. But of course, her words only amused everyone. She was scolded for her nonsense. Ali called for everyone to take a look outside, and they saw the dragon glowing like an aurora. They were mesmerized. Bert told them that in this country, dragons are considered sacred creatures or even divine beings. He asked Delphina if she was really calling such a being a manifestation of darkness. Students shunned Delphina for her words, and Ali smiled, noticing that Custody had won everyone over within seconds. Custody told everyone he was a dragon who lived in the volcanoes of the far north, and he sensed divine energy calling him to this place. When he arrived, he saw a girl blessed by God falling from the roof, and without a doubt he saved her. Custody announced it was his duty to protect Ali. The students quickly understood exactly what was happening. Ali was the true saint, and as a result, Delphina tried to kill her. They knew that lies couldn't save Delphina anymore. Ali told Delphina that the evidence spoke for itself and she could not escape that. But all Delphina muttered was that she was the heroine of the story. She told everyone she was the center of the world and the heroine. She followed every single step exactly as she should. And all Ali did was steal Prince Umberto from her. She cast her magic once again, trying to hurt everyone. Ali asked if they were okay before spotting a sharp fountain pen. It seemed like all the students were enchanted, and Ali knew she was the only one who could now handle this. Suddenly, a boy leapt out to try and hurt Ali, but he was quickly knocked back by Bert. Ali breathed out, thanking Umberto for saving her. Bert told her it was nothing but check she was not hurt. He promised to always have her back. Ali smiled, asking Bert what she should do now. Bert told her firstly not to overexert herself, but Ali promised she could hold her own. She confidently turned around to face the one girl who had tried to ruin her life. Delphina was still controlling the students, and Ali watched them charge at her. Delphina told Ali that she was the heroine and she would crush everyone. Ali turned to face everyone, forming a fist in both hands. She appeared more confident and ready than ever, knowing that they were all advancing toward her. Delphina managed to take down 2 people who attacked her, realizing that even if the noble ladies were being manipulated, they were not her real enemies. The real problem was someone else. Suddenly, more people turned toward Ali, who told Bert that she would leave the ladies to him. Bert smiled and told her he would act accordingly. Ali raced toward a boy, taking him down with a single kick. Her power made Bert chuckle, and Ali knew she needed to focus on reducing their numbers. Suddenly, she was nearly struck by a wooden sword, but she quickly knocked it out of another boy's hands. She managed to bring down a few more, leaping onto their shoulders and knocking them unconscious. She knew she couldn't let anyone get in her way. When another student charged at her, she calmly raised her hand, stopping him mid-attack and sending him flying across the room. At last, Ali had taken down Delphina's entire defense, leaving Delphina frozen by the door. Ali asked if the fight was really going to end that quickly. Loris, Oreste, and Rosario were amazed by Ali's martial arts skills. They joked that she really was the Demon King, taking everyone down in a matter of minutes. Julieta and the twins cheered her on, as did Bert, Jan, and Mary. Ali thanked them with a laugh before turning back to Delphina. She told Delphina that she truly was a terrifying woman before asking what kind of charm magic she had cast on the students. But Delphina clung to her delusions, shouting that everyone must sacrifice themselves for her and protect her. Ali sighed, begging her to stop the nonsense. She asked who Delphina thought she was, claiming to be the only hero. Ali argued that everyone in this room was a hero. But Delphina had another idea. She told Ali that this world existed for her alone and it was created to make her happy. Delphina suddenly erupted with rage. She shouted that she had lived through this world over and over again. Everyone was supposed to fall under her spell, and she had worked tirelessly to reach her goal. The only one left was Umberto, the hidden character. She insisted she had worked so hard to reach his root. Ali told her that too many people had paid the price for her selfishness. Not only did she control everyone with her magic, but she also stole Alexandra's fiancé and completely isolated her. In the end, she had even gotten her exiled under false charges. Bert tried to calm Ali down, but she told him not to interfere. She was standing on business this time. Bert smiled, agreeing to stay back. Ali faced Delphina and asked her directly if she was a reincarnator, before revealing that she was too. She explained that before she relived this world, she was Alexandra, the girl whose fiancé had been stolen, the one who drowned in despair with no way out. Ali apologized to everyone for hiding the truth, but she told Delphina that her charm magic had corrupted everything in this world. Loris, who had once been devoted to Alexandra since childhood, betrayed her without reason. Oreste and Rosario too, and everyone else suffered over and over again because of her. Unable to change her fate, Alexandra was forced to repeat this world 5 times. Ali asked Delphina if she could even imagine the pain of living the same torment 5 times over, to have the love of her life stolen by some trivial magic, to be scorned by her friends, to be cast out falsely and condemned. Ali asked if Delphina had ever considered how much pain she caused Alexandra, knowing the fate that awaited her after exile, yet being happy to repeat her actions again and again. She told her that she killed Alexandra without hesitation, all to fulfill her own petty desires. Ali began to cry and raged over everything this girl had put her through. Bert embraced her warmly, but all Ali could think about was how Alexandra had done nothing wrong, yet her soul was nearly erased. In that moment, when Alexandra could no longer defend herself, Ali vowed to teach everyone a lesson on her behalf. She could almost hear Alexandra's laughter and words of thanks. Only then did Ali decide to forgive. Loris and the others were victims of Delphina's magic, unaware of their actions. Even Delphina, Ali chose to forgive as long as she never repeated her foolishness. As long as Delphina didn't hurt anyone, Ali was willing to let her go. But when she tried to drown her in a frozen lake, that was the first time Ali had felt true anger. After controlling others with her magic, using a noble son as her pawn to carry out her crimes, and discarding a noble lady who tried to stop her, It was clear that she saw people as nothing more than tools. Still, Delphina showed no remorse. She told Ali she did all those things because she had to. This world existed only for her, so why should she care if others died? And in that moment, everything became clear to Ali. Back then, Delphina had asked her if she knew the term noble villainess. Ali looked at her and asked if she was talking about herself.